Most people who want to be well-rounded usually end up mediocre at everything. In the fitness world, they may try to train strength, conditioning, athleticism, and aesthetics all at once, and it feels hard. Recovery falls apart, progress stalls. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who train for exactly one thing. And that usually works for a while. I've done that. I've competed in powerlifting. I chased a whole lot of numbers. I optimized my body for one outcome. Eventually, I transitioned to bodybuilding. I wanted big delts. I wanted to be shredded all the time. But I'm not in those phases of life anymore. I'm not trying to have the biggest deadlift in the room, and I don't need the most dramatic V-taper to prove anything to anyone, especially other dudes on the internet. I'm starting a family. I want to look good, feel good, and have a body that actually works across different situations. The problem is that balancing strength, aesthetics, conditioning, and athleticism is very hard if you treat all of these as equal priorities. Over time, I found that the answer is not balance, it's having more structure, a way to layer these qualities in your life so they support each other instead of competing. And that is what this video is about. And if you don't know me, my name is Dr. Christian Poulos. I have devoted most of my life to becoming the best version of myself in all areas: health, wealth, relationships, happiness, self, and I'm here to teach you the same thing. So today let's talk about being well-rounded in training. So the goal that we're actually trying to optimize for isn't to maximize just one metric of your life. The goal is having range, having depth, being strong, athletic, lean, conditioned, and durable at the same time. I want a body that works under fatigue, under chaos, across different environments, in different positions, in different rep ranges, everything. And that's probably one of the biggest drawing factors towards the hybrid athlete and high rocks training movement. People want to be strong, but they also want to be able to do cardio, run a marathon. It's just impressive because these worlds historically have been on two opposite poles. And that is a lot of my life philosophy. I kind of touched on this earlier, but I think of myself sort of like a video game character. I played RuneScape back in the day, if you remember that, and I want to maximize all my stats. In RuneScape, it was attack, defense, wood cutting, cooking. I don't even remember any of the qualities. But in my life, it is knowledge. It is wisdom. It is building a business that I'm happy with, a life that I'm happy with, being able to read a lot of books, being able to travel, see new things, experience new foods, get good at cooking, be a great partner, expand my friendships. The list goes on. And of course, on the fitness side, it is, of course, being healthy, but also strength, athleticism, conditioning, and aesthetics. I'm looking pretty decent. This is the type of training for people who want long-term capability, not necessarily a trophy, a plastic one, and people judging you standing on a stage in a bikini. Like I said, I don't care about specializing anymore. Specializing in one area usually leads to detriments in another. I'm sure you've seen plenty of people who are strong, but are very slow. Plenty of people who are fast, but weak, etc., etc. And the reason I got into this is because I was very big and strong, but I had never thrown a punch in my life. I just looked like the size of someone that you wouldn't want to fight with, which usually helped in my situation. But I also tried running, and I was gassing out on a 9.5 minute, 10-minute mile. Literally, when I was in 7th grade running the mile in gym class, I was doing 7 minutes, 7.5 minutes, piece of cake, and I hardly even trained. Over the last few years, I looked pretty in shape visually, but my performance just didn't match it. So now I want to talk a little bit more about the core idea. And again, I touched on this in the intro, but training isn't about balance. It is about layering in the right way. Each quality places a different stress on the system. Some stresses might amplify each other. Some stresses might compete. Layering means deciding what comes first, what supports it, and what gets limited. So I said that things may amplify each other. Usually some hypertrophy work for aesthetics and strength are probably going to amplify each other. If you're working on your upper chest, it might help with your bench press, for example. I said some stresses might compete. Usually being really good at cardio means you have to have a lower body weight, which is obviously going to compete with strength. Once you understand what roles you want in your life, in your training, in your body, the week is going to organize itself. And with this, it is layering, it is not balance. You do not need to train everything equally. You just need to train everything more intentionally. Know when to push in one area, know when you're not recovered and you need to hit the brakes, when to skip a session or even add another one in. So enough of the philosophy stuff here. Let's give you a mental framework of the principles that we are going to optimize for. Principle number one, I've talked about this a little bit already, but it is strength. Strength is going to be the base. It is not the overall goal. The reason I think strength is important is because strength raises your ceiling for everything else. It's going to improve your resilience, your confidence, your force output, but it also has the fastest diminishing returns if you push it too far. Past a certain point, strength is going to cost more recovery than it gives you back. So strength must be trained very hard, but it also has to be contained and very logically structured. And I literally say this all the time, but I think everyone in the world would be better off if they were stronger. It really is simple as that. Your old grandmother, my old grandmother, even kids, people in their 30s, a random stay-at-home wife who is 45 and hanging out with 5 kids during the day. Literally everyone would be better off being stronger. Without strength, everything's going to feel fragile. With too much emphasis on strength, though, everything else in your life is going to suffer. If you've done powerlifting in the past like I have, you know that after a long day of squats and deadlifts, your brain is fried. Not just your muscles, but your brain and your central nervous system. I just want to be able to pick heavy stuff up. Really is as simple as that. It is one thing that AI or technology has not gotten rid of, and it is picking heavy things up. There are probably going to be robots doing that soon, though. And from a health standpoint, strength is going to lead to stronger joints, better bone density, more bodily resilience. And again, I have a powerlifting background. Because I was strong in the past, it was a bit easier to improve upon everything else as opposed to doing this the other way. So because I had strength, I was able to build muscle, able to build more power and explosiveness in Muay Thai, which is the athleticism thing that I train. Vice versa, I do think it is a little bit harder to go from an athletic feat or a very conditioned background into strength and aesthetics. And now, on that note, we have principle 2. Conditioning is going to support your recovery. Conditioning is not supposed to be a punishment. Conditioning really is not about suffering. Aerobic work improves your recovery capacity. It lets you tolerate more training across the week. And with this, I do think hard conditioning, things like sprints or really intense rounds going to zone 4 or zone 5 heart rate, should be used pretty sparingly, especially if you're doing all these different things. Easy conditioning is going to be the infrastructure for this. It is going to build all the roads in your city, the city of your life, that connects everything together and holds it strong. So in my opinion, I think you should be doing a combination of slow zone 2 sessions. And if you don't know what zone 2 is, I'm not sure the exact heart rate, but it is a pretty easy pace. The way I like to describe it and mention it to my clients is you should be able to speak a relatively out of breath sentence while you're doing this cardio. That's why sometimes you may be walking in the park and you see people running but talking on the phone. They're trying to stay in zone 2. Pretty neat hack. And you're also going to want the more infrequent VO2 max high intensity sessions, the zone 4, zone 5 that I talked about earlier. You won't be able to maintain this sort of intensity and pace for more than probably 20 to 40 seconds, maybe a minute if you're insane and super conditioned, but this is going to be a lot more minimal, mainly just to raise that VO2 max and also push yourself to do hard things. VO2 max is correlated with longevity, so we want to train that. Without this, without the conditioning infrastructure, everything else is going to be brittle, and this is what actually allows you to repeat all these endeavors long term. Your heart really is the most important muscle, and I do think we should train it more. I skipped plenty of cardio days back in the day, but I do think it is important now. Now for principle number 3, aesthetics are going to be a byproduct of your conditioning and your strength. Muscle mass is going to matter for durability and also your confidence most likely as well, but I think hypertrophy training itself is easy to overdo. Not hypertrophy and growing muscles itself, but the hypertrophy work. Too much hypertrophy work is going to quietly steal your recovery. There are plenty of people doing a whole lot of junk volume. Say they get 99% of their growth with 10 sets per muscle per week. A lot of people are pushing it to 20, 25, 30, and just doing junk volume that's going to steal that recovery and isn't really doing anything. Aesthetics should emerge from this entire system working. And of course, your diet, that is a topic for another video. We're talking about training today. And I always say that you should train a little bit more like an athlete, but I think it needs to be clarified that I think that people who don't train like athletes need to train more like athletes. And people who do train like athletes do need a little bit more of the traditional powerlifting, bodybuilding type exercises. Because doing just one, in the case of chasing just looks, it's often going to degrade your performance. So you do need to have that balance. So this is less of a thing that matters for like athleticism and performance, but obviously it's in our masculine nature or feminine nature to look pretty good. So this is thrown in where it needs to be, which I'll get to how this is all put together. Of course, principle 4, we have athleticism. This actually makes your strength and your conditioning usable. And I'm not a fan of the word functional training as a term, but it's really just making yourself usable. And it really depends on what you want to use your body for. What are you interested in? Athleticism is going to be different for everyone. To me, athleticism is going to be speed, power, coordination, elasticity, mobility. And this is actually what most adults lose first. There's plenty of 30-year-olds who never jump or never sprint again. And obviously it stays that way until they get older. Athletic work is going to keep your nervous system sharp. It's going to keep your body limber and mobile. Think about back to when you played sports growing up. You just felt like you could do anything. You were jumping on, the dugout, doing flips in football practice, doing all these random things. This goes away as you get older. You need to stay explosive. A lot of adults just feel slow, and this is going to prevent that. This type of training is going to be generally lower volume, higher intent, making sure you could fully recover from each type of session. We're not really overreaching too much in the athleticism department. And this is actually how gym strength is going to show up in real life. Without it, you're going to be strong, but you might be a little bit more limited. And this is the thing that showed up last for me, simply because I didn't really do anything for it. And athleticism eventually ends up being a combination of all these principles that I talked about, which is strength, conditioning, maybe some aesthetics as well. And principle 5 here is kind of a bonus add-on that I think you should think about. You do need a little bit of exposure to chaos to keep your training honest. Fitness in controlled settings, just going to the gym for an hour, doing your structured routine, really isn't enough if you're trying to maximize all your stats in health and fitness. You do need some movement under some unpredictability. Joining a sport, joining a random rec league, random beer league even, doing martial arts, going on runs on trails, picking up rocks in your garden. I don't know who has big, massive rocks in their garden. Things like that kind of chaos. For me, it's Muay Thai. My nervous system is activated every single time I'm in there just so I don't get punched in the face. I need my brain. And of course, I also ski as well. And I adjust my training to feel good in these things in part as well, just because I want to make sure I have that lateral strength and flexibility for skiing. I want to be able to kick my leg up towards someone's head for Muay Thai. It adjusts my training and also makes it more fun because I see that I'm improving in so many different factors of training. For others, exposure to chaos could just be anything that forces reaction or coordination. There's rock climbing that you could do, trail running, trail biking. The list is endless and I can't think of any more off the cuff for this video. All right, so now the part we've all been waiting for. This is how these principles are layered together. So we'll go through my week of training and how I recommend structuring these things just because I think referencing myself is probably the easiest. So I train 6-ish days a week. And no, I'm never really exercising longer than an hour or an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours for Muay Thai. My workout split is 3 days a week, full body, all 3 of those days. I like lifting 3 days a week. It's perfect for me. I've stuck to it since medical school. I don't really want to be in the gym any more than 3 days a week. And at this point in my training career, having, built a decent amount of muscle, it's more so maintenance just because naturally I can't really add. So for me, strength is going to be trained in very limited focused doses, as I mentioned earlier. So my first training session of the week is on Monday. It is a strength focused full body day. A little bit lower reps, more compound movements, think like squats, front squats, bench press, incline bench, those sorts of things, taxing the core and those big muscle groups. Athletic work is layered on my next full body workout on Wednesday. Here I'll do more work with bands and speed, like low rep front squats for speed, banded bench press for explosiveness, farmer's carries, or some oblique and rotational work like wood choppers or pulling and pushing a sled. Aesthetic work is going to be supportive here. It is designed not to tax my body too much. So my third full body day, usually on a Friday or Saturday, depending on the week, is going to be an aesthetics-based full body. A bit more machines, hitting the calves and the rear delts harder because I'm always skipping those. More of a hypertrophy rep range, that 8 to 12 to 15. But I also sprinkle in some exercises for hypertrophy at the end of my strength and athletic days. A few sets of supersetted lateral raises, curls, and tricep extensions, just because I want to stay jacked, and those are pretty easy and a relatively lower recovery load. And I'd rather split it all across the week instead of having one massive day where I'm crushing arms. Conditioning here is going to be spread across the week instead of very concentrated. Ideally, most people would do around 90 minutes of cardio per week. I do a little bit more because I'm crazy and I want to be the best at nothing in particular, but I want to be really good. For me, it's divided into zone 2, VO2 max, and sport specific cardio. So usually, I didn't do it today, I do 20 to 30 minutes of zone 2 on Mondays after strength. A long and boring run on Sundays for zone 2, around 45 minutes, or I'll do an incline treadmill if it's cold here in Colorado that day. I'll do VO2 max training after my hypertrophy day, but this is usually the one that I leave as optional just because it's really taxing and it really depends on my time and my recovery that I track on a Whoop. Tuesday and Thursday, I do around an hour and a half to 2 hours of Muay Thai, which is a combination of drilling / instruction, which is lower intensity, some pad work rounds where my heart rate is getting up pretty high, and sparring, which is, in between. So I'm in zone 2 for around half of my Muay Thai sessions, some spikes above that for a quarter of it, and lower intensity for the other quarter. My day off of training, especially in the winter, I like to ski. I live not too far away from a lot of the mountains, and this isn't really super taxing for me. I'm usually, zipping it down the mountain unless I'm wanting to crush my quads with some moguls. So as you can see, this workout structure is going to alternate stress types instead of stacking them. I'm never doing a workout really dreading the next day just because this is so spaced out. The volume is adjusted and I'm focusing on different things. And a core rule that you should follow when trying to balance all these things is that if today's training ruins tomorrow's training, your whole system is wrong and you need to fix it. So I know this all sounds fun, but there are some trade-offs with this. The trade-off is that you will not maximize one number. I will probably not be the fastest, mile runner. I will probably not win a bodybuilding competition. I will not win a powerlifting competition anymore or be a world-class Muay Thai champion. And that's okay. On top of that, progress is going to look a little bit slower on paper just because I'm optimizing for so many different things. But even though progress might look slower, you're making progress in a lot more things more rapidly, which I think makes the process a little bit more fun and gratifying, as opposed to being extremely obsessed with one thing, not seeing results, getting very demotivated, and moving on to something else to begin with. But despite this all, I get better recovery. I have more adaptability, fewer breakdowns, and a body that stays useful a little bit longer. And I really do think it's a lot more fun. And this is why I do this at the end of the day. If you've been doing one thing for a long time, it's pretty fun to switch it up and progress again, but in a new but related discipline. And that's how I got from powerlifting to bodybuilding and bodybuilding to whatever the heck this is. And I don't necessarily recommend this type of approach for everyone. This is usually for people who already train, have probably been doing this on and off since high school or college, but you want a little bit more range. You don't want to necessarily care about a podium. You value durability and capability in your life. This isn't necessarily for a beginner or someone who's trying to be really good in one thing. Different goals are going to need different systems, and this is my system. So to conclude, training is going to reflect how you see yourself. I train to be strong in multiple areas. I train this way to stay capable into my 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, beyond. I want a body that works in more than one context, and I refuse to build a body that only performs under perfect conditions. So with that, let me know if you have any questions on my training philosophy. Let me know if you have any other videos you'd like to see. And otherwise, like, comment, subscribe, and catch you in the next one.